Hi guys. All right, another one. Just audio only for the most part. You don't even have to pay attention to whatever the picture is. So, the concept of philosophy. What does it mean to be a philosopher? Well, let's just break down the word philo, philo. That is like if you talk about say audiophiles, right? An audiophile is somebody who loves sound and music. We call them audiophiles, and horror files. And I guess it's almost like people who've got phobias, right? There's a hydrophobe who's afraid of water, and you've got um, what is it? Arachnophobes who are afraid of spiders, and so there's that kind of two-part words. I think it's Latin going on here. So Sophy, Sophy, philo is the love of, and then Sophy, Sophy, that's wisdom, to love wisdom. And I mean, and what does an audiophile do? Well, every time that new song comes out, every time that new song hits, boom, they're on there, right? They're always looking for a good bop, and so I guess philosopher is always looking and curious for any time there's a new piece of wisdom. They're right on that. They're jumping on that thing like flies on shit. And so let's get into it's story time. So let's talk about a. I had to do a job outside. I just had to um, a while back I had to tie down a tarp, and so I would use like this nylon rope. I think it's called paracord, parachute cord, and it's fluorescent. And so I would tie these things down onto tent stakes with a trucker's hitch. And this was a few months back, and occasionally one of those tent stakes or one or more of those stakes have started working themselves loose. So I realize why. Is because I've been putting the tent stakes in straight as opposed to at an angle. Because you put them in straight, if you put them at an angle, it means that now the pull vector of the rope comes in at an angle from the stake, and it's pulling more to the side of the stake, and so the stake is better at resisting that kind of movement. Whereas if the rope is pulling straight on the stake, it just pulls it right out. And I mean, you there's that. Okay, so I screwed up in that way. And then the other thing is that the tent stakes that I used were also made of like an angled bent sheet metal. Like the cross section is this bend. And once again, I could see that if you bend that sheet metal, I found that the stakes were strong in a certain direction, meaning that it was easy to bend them one way, but they're resistant in the other. And oh shit. I took a look and I saw at the tent stakes, all the tent stakes I put in they're the wrong way around, okay? They're not in the strong way. So I had a bit of a Garden of Eden moment. Literally working out in the garden, I had a Garden of Eden moment where I suddenly realized, holy cow, I had not realized all this time I had been blissfully unaware that it was even possible to be this incompetent at putting in tent stakes. And what I mean by a Garden of Eden moment is that all this time, blissfully unaware, you're in the Garden of Eden and everything's paradise, everything's good, everything's fine. And then you realize that you fucked up. And not only did you fuck up, but you can see all the other fuck ups you've done because you've been doing it all the wrong way. And so that terrible moment of realization is the moment at which you, Adam or Eve, have been cast from the garden. You've been cast from paradise because now you realize, shit, now I got a whole lot of work to do. So I guess that would be my corrupted, modernized version of the Garden of Eden parable. So I would say that um, anytime you learn a new thing, anytime you learn when you're doing art. So when you're doing art, I'm sorry, it's like you're starting out at art. You suck. You suck at a bunch of things in art. You might suck at painting. You may suck at animation. You may suck at line control. You may suck at spatial control. There's so many things. I think when people want to know how do I draw, I think what you've got to really learn is you got to learn at in what ways do you suck? In what ways are you fucking shit up in ways that you never imagined possible? And how can you possibly do things in a way that is right? How can I train myself so that I don't have to worry about this later, so that I can once again find myself, back to the state of bliss that I was in before? So I think this is really what it means to learn, is it's not just all positive and roses and sunshine, but I think you really need to pursue, if you want to be good at anything, really, I mean, not just art, but making music, you got to find all the ways in which you suck and find how to not suck at these things. This is like the bare minimum thing, right? Like we're just talking technique here. We're not talking aesthetics, but I'm just saying you got to figure out, you got to know all the ways in which you can suck. And then you must, which casts you from the Garden of Eden, which demands that you must do work. You must work towards not sucking. And sometimes I find actually the working, and when you finally set the tent pegs right, it's very enjoyable. It's like, oh, finally, it's got that off our chest. The things aren't going to be working themselves free, and I'm not going to have to deal with it again. And so the same thing, goes with drawings. That I think there is always the inevitable, when you learn that you've done something poorly, that it will cast you from the Garden of Eden. It will cast you from your paradise, and then you will have your work set forth in front of you. And I think for people who are teachers, if you are a teacher, then it's also one of your jobs to disrupt your students. Your students are largely going to be sitting in a garden of ignorance, of ignorant bliss, and they do not know in what ways they suck, and they need to be shown. Now, I'm not saying be tactless, be a tactless jerk. I'm just saying, I mean, Gordon Ramsay's pretty popular, but people do subject themselves to Gordon Ramsay to find out ways in which they suck, so they can hopefully become better chefs. But yeah, you've got to disrupt yourself if you're going to move forward. And sometimes people, I was asked a question, look at this great artist, and I was told that I could get to that level in 6 months. Are they just pulling my chain here? They straight up jerking me around, and I just think, well, you've got to look at that artist. I thought just now, you got to look at that artist and think, what are all the things he does better than me? And this, whenever you see a really, somebody who's doing something right, and it looks just awe-inspiring, that should also be an indication that you suck in a number of ways. Perhaps the seeing of the artist who's really good, seeing the work of an artist who's really good is the fruit. It's the fruit from the tree of knowledge. It is attractive to see that other artist's work is so good. It's enticing. And if you eat of this fruit, it too will open your eyes, and you will become wise. And when you become wise, you will then be cast from you'll be cast from your paradise, from your wonderful state of ignorant bliss, and now you'll have to fucking work. And what I did say to the other fellow was, I said, it's like, he was saying, should I watch some sped up, versions of this artwork? Should I see the sped up process? And I said, well, eventually we kind of settled on, well, yes, you should see the sped up process so you have an overview, but I think you should also visit his streams and see him paint in real time, because then it will really reveal to you how long can you watch a person painting in real time before your own brain turns to fucking oatmeal? Because then it will reveal to you the actual amount of grind necessary, and how much you're sitting there filling in a fucking shape, or doing the little diddly work that's fussy and annoying. And so you want to, again, this is the learning. This is the learning of the work that casts you from the Garden of Eden. And I said that you may decide for yourself, simply by watching this other person work, that you don't want to do what they do. Like, here, let's use another example. Let's use a real life example, okay? Let's take Sakimi-chan. I love Sakimi-chan's work, all right? Not bagging on her at all. I fucking love her work. Big fan. And not the greatest fan though, because most of the time, because I'm not subscribed to her Patreon or anything like that, right? We're not There's no endorsements or anything like that. But, you know, I like her work. Really good stuff. Really clean, really awesome, very well made, and very sexy, very excellent. Great taste. And the thing is that I would never trade places with her. You know why? Because I've seen her process. I've seen, you know, how she works in real time. And I've just decided that's a lot of fucking work that I don't want to do. It's like the cost is too high. The cost is too high. And then, you know, she fucking works at that stuff all the time. And it's like, oh, that's not a kind of life I want to live. It's a great aesthetic. I can certainly appreciate it. But I don't like the workflow. I don't like the workflow. And so thank goodness for her. Thank goodness she exists, right? Thank goodness artists like her exist. Thank goodness artists like Wallop exist, you know, or, you know, thank goodness there are artists that exist to paint in a way that I can't stand. I can't stand the way they paint, but I love the final output. I love the final imagery, right? And this is just how if you're gonna come up with your own way of drawing, you know, you're gonna have to find not just are you gonna have to worry about the final output, but you're gonna have to worry about the cost of making your art. You're gonna have to worry about in what ways do you have to overcome your own suckiness, and how much time are you gonna spend, you know, or do you like the workflow? Right? I think to me, really solidifying your style doesn't just mean becoming technically competent, but it means finding the way in which you want to work in a way that you enjoy, and then it also generates art that has the aesthetic, it has the aesthetic feel that you're looking for. So it means that you willingly pay that cost, and you don't regret paying that cost of getting there, and you don't regret paying the cost of making each piece of art, and you like the art that comes out of it. And so I think that's really, really important, because if you don't, you're just going to burn out. You're just going to burn out and you'll just stop. And so really that's all that's going to happen. You're not going to do anything else. Okay. So you might as well stop fighting the flow. And, you know, I guess if you do that, maybe the faster you can do that, the faster you can get to the level you want to in 6 months. All right. So that's all I had to say. Bonus round of philosophy. So while I was tying that tent peg with the fluorescent paracord, an interesting thing about that fluorescent paracord is that it's dyed with the fluorescent dye, and so that means that the nylon isn't made with the dye inside it. The dye is just, it's been dipped in this dye, and the dye is unfortunately not 100% water soluble. Water resistant. It is slightly water soluble, which means that over the course of some rains and perhaps UV exposure in the sun, it has faded. It has faded in all parts except for those parts protected by the knots, all the parts that were in the tightest areas of those knots. And so I had to untie the knots, the trucker's hitch, and then had to retie it, redo it. And while I was in the process of retying that knot, I had a wasp, which was fascinated, absolutely fucking fascinated with the loops of rope that I had just untied. So there was fresh dye within the loop, within the knots. And I think there was just a lot of, you know, fluorescent stuff shoots out a lot of light. Some of that light that is reflecting is ultraviolet. And guess what? Flowers do the exact same damn thing. And wasps and bees see in the ultraviolet spectrum. And so this wasp was just sitting there, and it was just hovering around this loop of, and I just stopped what I was doing, and I just watched this thing for a while, wondering what was going on. And I think what was happening was it was thinking, is this thing a fucking flower? This is a flower, right? Now I'm supposed to land on this flower, suck the nectar out of it, and move on. Except I think what happened is it would come close, and it's like, that ain't no fucking flower. And then it would back off. Oh, I see the fluorescent light. Comes closer. Wait a minute, that ain't no fucking flower. And then it would buzz off, and then would say, oh, I see the fluorescent light. And the thing was caught in a fucking loop. I think I just witnessed a wasp malfunction. So yeah, kind of cool. The things. It's kind of funny. I think this is why it's important to do to do chores around the house, because sometimes you'll find them very, very enlightening. You'll find them very, just, there's very insightful. So again, that's what it means to be a philosopher. Is that you find insight in almost anything and everything, and even the most mundane of tasks. Anyway, that's gone on long enough. I'll see you guys later. Bye.